scholarship numbers flopping to stop the clock, how quickly Pitt's offense, how quickly Cade Bell's offense will get installed. We got a lot of great questions on this week's mailbag. There's nothing new about that, nothing different. We always have a lot of great questions. I can't wait to jump into it. So let's do it. The Morning Pitt Mailbag here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. It's Friday. It's youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com, and that means it's time for the Morning Pitt Mailbag, where we take questions from Pitt fans on the message boards at Panther-Lair.com about anything on their minds, football, basketball, recruiting, or anything else. History of Panther-Lair.com. There's actually a question about that this week, which I always like going down memory lane. So, I always like waxing nostalgic and, telling the origin stories and whatnot. So I always look forward to that kind of thing. But Pitt fans ask great questions every week. You guys sort of supply the content for the Friday edition of the Morning Pitt, and I'm always excited to do it right here at youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. You know what we always ask you to do? Like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel. That way you'll never miss any of our Pitt video content, these daily Morning Pitt videos, Monday through Friday. Our weekly live stream that we do every Wednesday night at 8 o'clock. Post-game shows that we do after every road basketball game, every football game, and every road basketball game. And then any, press conferences, interviews, all those kinds of things. We have it all right here at youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. All the Pitt video content you could possibly handle is right here. youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. So make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel, and then you won't miss any of that content. And then, of course, the website, Panther-Lair.com, Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com, the place to get all of your Pitt sports news, football, basketball, and recruiting, and message boards to talk about it. Other Pitt fans gathering there all day, every day, hundreds and thousands of them talking about Pitt sports. It's the best online community of Pitt fans that you're going to find, and it's right there at Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. If you're a Pitt fan, you want to be a part of it. All right, and that's those message boards. That's where we take the questions each week for the Morning Pitt Mailbag. So let's get started with it right there. NC Panther asks, when can we expect the second press conference from Cade Bell? Cade Bell was hired in early December. I mean, it became a running joke of when he was actually going to talk to the media. When he got hired, he pretty much hit the ground running on the recruiting trail right away. And so it wasn't going to happen then. The recruiting period ended, and we had that first signing day in December, and he was just trying to move to Pittsburgh and get settled in the city of Pittsburgh. And then when January rolled around, it was another recruiting period. He went on the road recruiting again. And that recruiting period finally ended last week, which allowed Cade Bell finally a moment to catch his breath and a few minutes or 20 minutes to talk to us on Wednesday. It was great to finally catch up with Cade Bell. It was great to finally hear him speak. I talked a lot about that on the Morning Pitt yesterday. The video of his press conference, you can find it right here at youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. And, I think it was well worth the wait. I think we got a lot of insight on Cade Bell, on who he is, on what he wants to do. I think there's no question about his confidence in himself, confidence in his offensive system. I think he very much believes in what he does offensively and believes that he can do that at Pitt. He's not concerned about the jump from FCS to FBS. He believes the system will translate. And, I can't say whether I am or am not sold on it, but, I think it's good that he believes, right? It's good that he believes in the system, and it's good that he is confident about it. And clearly he sold Pat Narduzzi on it. Next time we talk to Cade Bell, I'm guessing it'll be during spring camp. We'll look forward to that. I'm sure he'll have interesting things to say there. He'll have more insights on the players. We talked to him about a few guys individually, Nate Yarnell, Gavin Bartholomew, the guy, sort of broadly the transfers who were coming with him from Western Carolina, guys like CJ Lee and Desmond Reed and Raphael Williams. But by the time we get to spring camp, whenever we talk to Cade Bell, it's probably going to be a week or two into camp. He'll have an even better idea of who he's got, what he's got, and how they fit into his offense. I'm certainly looking forward to that. But I thought it was good to finally catch up with him. Hopefully you enjoyed that interview. We put the transcript and the video on the website at Panther-Lair.com. And it's all worth checking out. I think it was 20 minutes, and I think it was all worth your time. Yard Hogs asks, so with the two commitments this week, where do we stand? I think we're at 91, but I could be wrong. 6 over? Right, so the ongoing running scholarship total, as you mentioned, Pitt added 2 recruits this week. Tyreek Robinson, wide receiver from Louisiana, and Malachi Thomas, a tight end from Georgia. 2 more high school guys joining this this roster, joining the recruiting class, bringing it up to 21. 9 of those guys are already on campus, having enrolled early. The other 12 will come in June. But the number totals, as I look at it now, with moving, adding those 2 guys, and the transfers that they got and all the recruits right now, and taking off the guys that left via the transfer portal. Right now, if everybody comes back and all the recruits make it and nobody else leaves and all this stuff and all the walk-ons who went on scholarship stay on scholarship and everything, Pitt's projected currently to have 94 scholarship players by my count. I could be wrong. I could be off by 1 or 2, but I think they're at 94. Well, that's a lot more than 85. If the NCAA keeps its scholarship limit at 85, well, Pitt's going to have to find a way for 9 guys to move on. And I say if the NCAA is going to keep its scholarship limit at 85 because I think there's always a possibility you could see a change there. And certainly if a change happens, if they raise that number to 90 or 95 or make it unlimited, then Pitt's going to have, they're not going to have to get rid of anybody. Nobody's going to have to leave. Everybody stays on scholarship. Everybody is joining the party. If the scholarship limit stays at 85, they need 9 spots to open up. And that's just 9 spots to fit in the guys that they already have commitments from, or guys who have already signed. If they try and add any post-spring transfers, they're going to need even more spaces to open up. Now, there are ways to get those 9 spots to open. For starters, you have a few guys who went on scholarship in the last year or 2 who were previously walk-ons. And, walk-ons, when they go on scholarship, it's understood it's a 1-year aid agreement. I mean, all these things are 1-year agreements, but, effectively when it comes down to it. But I think the walk-ons understand that they might, come off scholarship. And so you keep an eye on that. Maybe there's some changes made there to get down to 85. But there's only like 2 or 3 of guys who would qualify there, which means you're still going to need 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 or 9 scholarship players to leave after spring camp. I think we could all look at the roster and find 9 guys that probably aren't going to be part of the, aren't going to be in the mix this year. They're not going to be third, they're going to be third team at best. Upperclassmen, 4th and 5th year players, maybe 3rd year players who really aren't going to be in the 2 deep. And maybe those players look at their situation after spring camp and they say, well, I'm just not going to be in the mix here. There are younger players ahead of me. And I don't see myself even being a rotation guy, a 2-deep guy, in which case they leave. Pitt's going to need 7, 8, 9 of those guys to make that decision and go. So it's going to be interesting. What also is interesting is, like I say, they're projected, as we count it, for 94, which means that, they have 12 guys, 12 recruits who are going to enroll in June, which means they're going to be very close to 85 for spring camp. I mean, if all the numbers are, if all my numbers are right, and if all the walk-ons are still on scholarship and everything like that, they could have like 82 scholarship players in spring camp, which is unheard of. You never have that many scholarship players in spring camp. The numbers are always low because, you always have, the seniors are gone and the recruits haven't gotten there yet. Well, this year with 9 high school guys enrolling early and I think 9 or 10 transfers or however many they ended up with, also enrolling in January, you basically made up the difference and ended up with almost virtually a full roster. It's going to be really crowded in the indoor facility this spring because they could have 82 scholarship players participating in spring camp, which is a crazy number. Like I say, it's unheard of, but gives you more depth and, more guys to take the reps. Joey David says, now that we have heard from Cade Bell and his approach, in what game will we first see Narduzzi complaining to the refs about the opposing defensive line doing the, as Joey David calls it, the Narduzzi flop, faking a calf cramp to slow Pitt down? It's funny because that's an angle I hadn't really thought of before. It hadn't occurred to me, but you're absolutely right. If this offense, if they actually go as fast as they say they can go, and Cade Bell says we can go as fast as Tennessee if we want to. Desmond Reed, who played for Cade Bell at Western Carolina, said the goal was to snap the ball every 7 to 10 seconds. If they actually play that fast, there's going to be a lot of ifs in this statement, right? But 1, if they actually play that fast. 2, if they're actually good at it, if they're actually effective and they can move the ball and they can score playing that fast, then yeah, other teams are absolutely going to flop to try to slow them down. And it's going to be hilarious because Pat Narduzzi is going to lose his mind, even though this is something Pitt has done. And I mean, we're hurling accusations and allegations here, but I mean, and speculation. But let's be honest, we've all watched it. We watched the UCF game in 2018. You know, I've long contended that UCF game was one of the absolute low points, maybe the low point. Certainly prior to this past season, it was the low point of the Narduzzi era at Pitt. Not just because they got run off the field by a team that was at that point not among the Power 5 conferences, not just because, you know, it was part of a losing streak and a pretty rough start to the season, but it was things like that. It was the clear and obvious flops that just made the game not just a loss and not just a blowout loss, but an embarrassment. It was an embarrassment to do those things. And they've done it time, you know, off and on. There was always a running joke that Pitt's defensive tackles were the most injured players in college football because every game one of them went down, and maybe they were always getting cramps. In which case, Pitt needs to buy more Gatorade or something, or stretch out better, or make sure these guys are hydrating, or they were trying to slow the other team's offense down. Well, guess what? If you actually go as fast as you say you're going to go, and if you're actually good at it, and you know, put me firmly in the camp of believe it when I see it. You know, when it comes to this team going that fast and actually being good at it. But if those things happen, then yeah, absolutely teams are going to flop against them. And if teams flop against them, then absolutely Pat Narduzzi is going to freak out about it. And it's going to be hilarious. I mean, it is going to be one of the funniest things we see all season is Pat Narduzzi losing his mind on the sidelines because other teams are faking cramps and going down to try to slow down Pitt's high-paced, fast-paced offense. Again, if all those things come to pass. But it will be hilarious, though. No question about it. Thunder Pit Road says, with how crucial it is for the new offense to be effective this season, what confidence do you have in the current offensive players to adapt to and learn Cade Bell's system quickly? So, you know, this was something I talked about. I want to bring up his quote. Cade Bell's quote from Wednesday. All right. So Cade Bell was asked. Okay, well let's roll back. So you're saying, what confidence do I have in the current offensive players to adapt to and learn Cade Bell's system quickly? I mean, we'll see. We'll see how much Cade Bell wants to try and install this spring. We'll see how much he's able to put in. And we'll see how the players do with adapting to it. I think they've got smart guys on this team, veteran players on offense. We'll see how they do learning a new offensive system. But there was something I talked about when Pitt made the new hires, when they hired Lindsey Lamar to be the running backs coach and Jacob Bernowski to be the tight ends coach and special teams coordinator, and Jeremy Darvo being the offensive line coach. And I mentioned Darvo in particular because I think he was especially crucial. When you talk about hiring away, you know, Western Carolina's offensive line coach, you say, wow, is that the best you could do? You couldn't find an FBS guy or, you know, Power 5 guy or whatever. But I think it was important to get an offensive line coach with familiarity with the offense. I really do. And I said this at the time, that as you move through the installation period, because it's so important for this offense to hit the ground running. I mean, like what you're asking about, because it's so important for the offense to hit the ground running and not have a period of adjustment or a learning curve or growth or anything like that they can do it right off the bat. Because that's so important, I think it was very valuable. It is very valuable to get the offensive line coach from Western Carolina so that you're in a situation where the players are going to be learning the new offense. But if the players and their position coach are learning a new offense, and particularly the offensive line, which is a crucial position to everything, of course, if the players and the coach are learning a new offense, it's going to be that much more of a challenge. It's that much more of an uphill climb to try to get the offense installed. But if the offensive line coach already has that familiarity and he's already, has a deep understanding of the offense, of how it works, of what Cade Bell is looking for and what he wants to happen, I think that's huge for getting the offensive line up to speed even more quickly. So they're not learning at the same time as the O-line coach. The O-line coach already knows. So they are learning from someone who knows, not someone who's learning along with them. And on Wednesday, Cade Bell was asked about hiring Jeremy Darvo. Said, how important was it to bring him with you? And Cade Bell said, quote, very important. I think that's the hardest. Everybody talks about quarterbacks. The offensive line is the hardest position to coach. You have 5 guys on the field at one time. They have to be on a chain with communication and everything going on. They really set the tempo. They set the physicality, the offense, and the nastiness. Just having him to where I don't have to teach that. Having him come in and I know he can take those guys right now and teach them everything I want them to know and exactly how I want it done. That's huge because to me, that's probably the hardest position to coach. One guy coaching 5. End quote. That last part is the key there. Having him come in and I know he can take those guys right now and teach them everything I want them to know and exactly how I want it done. That's huge. That is going to help. I think that'll help the installation of this offense and the players, internalizing it and embracing it and understanding it so much. Obviously, Bell is going to be working directly with the quarterbacks. That's an essential position to have an understanding of the offense. Everybody's got to get it. But I think you need quarterback and O-line to get it more than anybody else and understand it more than anybody else and internalize it more than anybody else. And you've got 2 guys who are intimately familiar with the offense in Cade Bell and Jeremy Darvo teaching those positions. So, how confident am I in these players getting it? I don't know. We'll see. But I think I think those 2 hires give the players in the offense a better chance of getting it down more quickly so that they can ideally hit the ground running in the fall. H2P_JC says, who do you think is in the running for defensive line coach? I don't know. I'm not sure. Haven't really got too many names or anything like that. I do think it'll happen quickly because, spring camp is a month away. So they need to get going. Recruiting is over. Charlie Partridge stayed through the recruiting period, but now he's gone to the Indianapolis Colts, and they're going to need somebody in here. So in the next few weeks, they can be ready to go out and run practice. So I think something will happen soon. I'm just not sure who it'll be. Jed the Jet says Bell has the offense going in a direction that Narduzzi has Narduzzi in a different position. Do you think the hire was really a concession that the recruiting isn't good enough to run the offense that needs a really good O-line and quarterback play? That's interesting. Interesting question. There was a prevailing thought and a feeling for a long time as the spread offense was being developed that it was being used as a way to neutralize certain areas, certain shortcomings, right? That if you couldn't recruit O-line that well, if you couldn't recruit this or that, you can run these different kinds of offenses that sort of neutralize the disadvantage that you've got there and take advantage of other, matchups and mismatches that you might be able to win with. That maybe you can recruit, you might have more success recruiting. I don't necessarily think that's what Pat Narduzzi was going for with this hire. I think this hire is a concession from Narduzzi that he needs a different kind of offense, a more explosive offense than what he's had pretty much at any point during his career at Pitt. I think that's the concession. I think the concession is that he looked back over the last 2 seasons, saw like at least a half dozen games that they lost because of offense and said, man, I'm wasting a good thing here. I'm wasting a good thing with bad offense. And so we need something a little more exciting, a little more explosive, and a little more productive. And so he went out to try to find a guy who runs an offense like that. I think that was the concession, that they needed a different approach on offense. And he got it. Drastically different. Incredibly different. Let's see. Austin26 says, Chris, you mentioned in a Morning Pitt this week that Charlie Partridge's departure, you question whether anyone on the current staff had the stones to tell Narduzzi what he needed to hear. Wednesday, in his press conference, Pat Narduzzi stressed that he didn't want his coaches to be yes men. He needed them. It was critical for them to speak their minds. Am I convinced? I think it's an interesting question. I do believe what I said and continue to believe what I said about Charlie Partridge and kind of the role he served and with regards to Pat Narduzzi. I do think Narduzzi came out of last season feeling like not enough guys on the staff were willing to tell him what they felt like he needed to hear. Not in a disrespectful or questioning way, but if they had an opinion, they needed to voice it. And I think he felt like they didn't feel like they could or should do it. Part of that is probably the the environment he's created. Whether he acknowledges that or not. I think if guys are reluctant to speak their opinions, it's probably because they fear repercussions. And that's probably something Narduzzi needs to see and acknowledge. Or he just needs assistant coaches who aren't afraid of that. That like, all right, head coach might tear me a new one for this, but I got to tell him that random example, I don't think this quarterback's getting it done. I think this quarterback is costing us games, coach. And even if you might be a little bit afraid of what's coming, you need to step up and say it if you feel like that's what's best for the team. So I don't know if he replaced the guys who are gone with guys who will do that, but I think that was one of the lessons learned over the last season that were kind of influenced things as they went into this off season. I think that's sort of my speculation, semi-informed speculation. All right, last one. WA Panther 11 says, can you give a little insight into the history of Panther-Lair? When did it start? When did it really start to take off with membership and engagement? And what are your most memorable commitments or headlines over the years? So, memory lane, I love it. I wish I could play some like sentimental music or something in the background. I mean, Panther-Lair.com started before I got here. I joined the site in December. I think it was December 2004, somewhere around there. Maybe February 2005. I mean, I remember one of my first. It was probably December 2004. I think the first press conference I ever attended as part of the Panther-Lair.com staff was signing day 2005. So it had been February 2005. I read about how Dave Wanstead tried to rebuild the defensive line and all this kind of stuff. But the site started before that. It started a few years earlier than that. It might have started as early back as like 1999 or 2000. I forget the exact origin. I know Harry Pisaris was part of it back in the day. I think Frank Sokol, who I never actually crossed paths with, but people always mention his name. So shout out to him if he's still around and kicking. Hope he is. But the site existed. Jim Snyder was the publisher when I joined the site as a staff writer. After a couple of years, Jim wanted to step down, and so I ended up stepping in. I forget exactly what year that was. Probably 2007 or 2008. I don't know. And I've been the publisher of the site since then. When I couldn't tell you. I mean, obviously, I think there was a big period of growth for the site around the coaching changes, 2010, 2011, 2012. I think that was a big period of growth for us because, we covering coaching changes. People have a lot of interest and they end up, wanting to subscribe to sites that have information on that kind of thing. And we did. And so that was a big period of growth. I think 2 years in a row, we had the biggest percentage growth of any rival site in the, or any site in the rivals.com network, which is pretty impressive, except for the circumstances that caused that to happen, which is Pitt having to go through all those coaching searches. I mean, those were some of the most notable times. I mean, there's so many headlines over the years. There's so many commitments over the years. There's so many crazy commitment stories and commitment press conferences that we cover and crazy developments, and Todd Graham leaves and, Mike Haywood gets arrested. I always tell the story. I mean, my wife and I for a few years went to Ruth's Chris for New Year's Eve dinner. And so New Year's Eve 2010, I guess it was, 12/31/10, we're at Ruth's Chris. My phone keeps buzzing, but I'm like, no, this is the one, this is a time where we are just going to sit here. It's New Year's Eve. We have this little tradition. We're going to, I'm just going to eat. I am not looking at my phone. I'm not dealing with it. And finally leave the restaurant and look at my phone. I'm like, holy. I often always also tell the story of the previous summer when I was on my honeymoon. We had gotten married in May. We went on our honeymoon over the summer. We went to Aruba. This was one where I put my phone in the safe. I think I probably had my laptop. Maybe not. Maybe I didn't even bring my laptop along, but I put my phone in the hotel safe. I was like, this is my honeymoon. I am going to spend this week away from the site and the boards and Pitt News and everything like that. And I one day midweek, I was like, I'm going to go down to the little business center in the hotel. Shout out always. Well, I'll get to it. I go down to the business center in the hotel. I'll just check it out. Just poke on. I mean, like, I'm having a great time. I'm in paradise, one happy island. It's a great place to be. Let's just check it out. Let's see what's going on. And I sit down. I go through the whole process of, like, logging into this computer. And I go to the website. I go to Panther-Lair.com. And shout out to our guy, Josh Sickles. He always likes when I mention him during this story, because I always mention him during this story, because he was writing for us at the time, and he was covering everything while I was on my honeymoon. And so anything that came up, he had to write about and get on the front page and everything. And I click and I go to the site, and right there on the front page is Jabal Sheard got arrested. And I looked at it, and I didn't even click the article. I just saw the headline, and I went, okay, click, X, close the window, log out. Get out of there. Like, that's, and so thanks to Josh. If you're still checking in, I appreciate it. Every time I tell that story, I always have to give Josh a shout out. But I mean, there's a million stories like that over the years. There's Robert Foster. There's Drayvon Henry with the commitment. There's the Jordan Whitehead and Russell Shell's commitments. There are incredible, upset wins, just crazy games. I mean, crazy games on both sides of it, whether it's the 13-9 game or the Navy game that happened that same year. Whether it's, the 3 overtime game at Notre Dame, where the sprinklers came on and Connor Lee made all those field goals, or the Bowling Green game that happened earlier that season. I mean, every year has extreme games where you just can't believe what you're seeing. I mean, that bowl game at the end of the 2014 season, the Armed Forces Bowl or whatever it was, and the way that whole thing went down, or the bowl game the previous year, where James Conner and Chad Voitic had their coming out party to win the Pizza Bowl. I mean, it's just, there's been great players along the way. I mean, that's just football stuff too. Never mind you get into the basketball stuff. There's been great players, great people, coaches. I mean, there's lots of stories, lots of headlines. It's hard to boil down almost 20 years of covering Pitt for this site. It's hard to boil it down into one best headline or one best moment. I mean, there are incredible times. Crazy stuff has happened. A lot of crazy stuff has happened over the last 20 years. That's probably the best way I can say it. And it's never dull. It's always interesting, no matter what it is. And to some extent, and I'll leave it at this. I say it's never dull. It's always interesting. And to some extent, I mean, that is true. And to some extent, that is true because of the message boards. That no matter what it is, you guys make it interesting. It could be the most innocuous thing. And, like, damn if there isn't a thread about it. And people are getting into it. And sometimes the threads take crazy left turns or right turns and go in different directions. If they go to politics, they just get deleted. But when they stay away from politics, we tend to have some pretty interesting conversations. So you guys make it interesting. No matter what it is, there's always interesting stuff on the board. So, hat tip to you for that. I appreciate it. And thanks to everybody who submitted questions for the mailbag this week. Some great questions, always some fun conversations to have with this. Thanks everybody who watched this video today and watched all the videos throughout the week. No Pitt basketball this weekend. They've got the weekend off before this real stretch run of 8 games starting on Tuesday night at Virginia. So we'll have a lot of coverage heading into that. Of course, we'll be back with the Morning Pitt on Monday. We'll have the live post-game show after the game on Tuesday night. We'll have our live stream on Wednesday night. Lots of Pitt coverage for you right here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. So like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel. We appreciate that. And that's it. Hope you've had a great week. Hope your Friday goes really well. Enjoy your weekend. We will be back with you on Monday morning right here for Morning Pitt. youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com.